Peter K. Navarro in for Stephen K. Bannon, and honor and pleasure. We're with Commander Jack Carr, who wrote this amazing book, Only the Dead. The reason why we're talking about fiction today in the War Room, instead of the many nonfiction books that Steve talks about, is because as a fan of the Terminal List series, there's 6 of them. This last book, Only the Dead, is an absolute clinic from the grassroots of what MAGA, Make America Great Again, what the folks in deplorable land, I think really stand for. I've been trying to explain it's the end endless wars, secure borders, strong manufacturing base, things like fair elections. But I got to admit, Jack Carr does it a lot better and more exciting ways than I do. So what we're doing here with the commander is I'm going to read a passage now. We're going to go from the war in Afghanistan, where he served admirably, to Chapter 2 of Only the Dead. I'm going to read this and get a little reaction here. And what this is from the Russian perspective, and this is what I love about the book. Jack comes at this problem through different lenses and kind of what they learned from us and what we haven't learned from them. So here it is. The war in Ukraine was not going well from a tactical perspective. From a strategic perspective, it had succeeded beyond their expectations. The Americans were drawn in, funding the corrupt Ukrainian government at levels unheard of, even at the height of their follies in Iraq and Afghanistan. Commander Carr, thoughts?
So just looking at where our money's going, and it's just like any big corporation, you have to show profits quarter after quarter, year after year. And when you've had a solid run for 20 years of evolving, and you have these senior level admirals and generals going in front of Congress and saying that they just need more troops, more money, the Afghan military or the Iraqi military, they're getting there. We're making progress. I mean, you can go back to any of those congressional testimonies and take the date off, and they all sound exactly the same. It's those guys getting up there with all those ribbons on their chests asking for more. And once that comes to an end, like it did in August of 2021, it seems like we were in a bit of a hurry to find another way to fill those coffers. And as everyone knows, or most people should know, when you add countries to NATO, that means that they need now NATO equipment. And who makes a lot of that equipment? Well, the defense industry here in the United States.
Here we go.
War in Ukraine, who does that benefit? Well, it certainly doesn't look like it benefits the Ukrainians. When you see those photos coming back in, those videos coming back in, who does it benefit? Well, it certainly benefits the defense industry, no doubt about that. So I just like to look at these problems through other people's lenses to see what conclusions I would come to in their shoes.
So one of the themes that I've talked about before on the War Room is this idea of kind of, you look at the chessboard and you think of Vladimir Putin as a Russian where chess is kind of the national sport. And as a chess master, it's like, to me, what happened in the wake of what the war is like, it's actually benefited Russia. And my question that I've always posed is, was Putin lucky or good? And good in terms of strategy. So let me read this to you, which as follows. The U.S. sanctions had the opposite purported effect, regardless of what politicians in Washington, D.C. continue to say on cable news. Little digression there. You're not a fan of cable news, I can see. Russia's central bank posted an account surplus in the first half of the year, more than $110 billion. The ruble was now the strongest it had been in close to a decade, and the nation was posting a massive trade surplus, billions of dollars higher than before the special operation to retake Ukraine began. Russian exports now exceeded its imports, creating an inflow of domestic currency. The exact opposite was happening in the United States. Now, I've never seen that good of economic analysis on CNBC or Fox Business. How does a Navy SEAL come up with that kind of sophistication and nail it? I mean, how did you get to that?
Took a lot of research. 2 books ago, I went deep into the bioweapons research and bioweapons defense. The one previous to this, I went deep on AI and quantum computing. And this one was really the economics of warfare, in particular, the war in Ukraine. And I thought, well, if they're telegraphing this move, that they're going to go and retake Ukraine, and they're calling it this special operation, they're certainly going to think a couple moves ahead. As you said, it's these chess moves. So if they do that, what will the U.S. do? What will NATO do? Oh, sanctions. That means they have to think a step ahead of that. If the U.S. and NATO apply sanctions to Russia in the wake of an invasion of Ukraine, what would that mean? Oh, and how do we now counter that ahead of time? And that's the futures sales to China and to India as far as gas and oil goes. So it was really just looking at the problem and learning. I'm just a student, study economics or anything like that. But now I am a student of economics because it was important to tell this story. And so I went deep down the rabbit hole on these things to build out the first the outline.
But who in economics talks about this? I mean, were any folks you remember when you're in the research? Because this is deep stuff. This is great insight.
No, I talked to a few different people in the financial world that specialize in gas and oil.
Okay.
I just posed questions. As a student, I tried to study it as much as I could that would allow me to then ask questions that would show that I had at least done the research before I stepped into the room with these people. Same thing I did in the previous 2 books. Just did as much as I possibly could on my own, got myself to as educated as I possibly could on these things that allowed me then to do a deep dive with people who lived and breathed it and have for decades. So I would ask them those questions and pose it in a way, if this, then what? And ask them to put themselves into Russian shoes looking at the situation. And then I pieced this puzzle together by doing that.
And let me double down on this because what we talk a lot about here on the War Room is how the corporate elitists and people who are making all this money off the backs of the black, brown, and blue collar Americans. They're into we call it the managed decline of America as we move to a globalist thing. So let me read this. It was good that Americans placed no value on history. Had they learned nothing from the collapse of the Soviet Union? They kept spending money they didn't have. Big theme on the War Room. Throwing gasoline on the coals of inflation, ostensibly increasing the gap between rich and poor. Intentionally. They couldn't seem to find a war they didn't like. Politicians on both sides of the aisle, encouraged in no small part by the defense industry's lobbyists, voted for massive spending bills in support of the corrupt regime in Ukraine. We just saw that. Billions of dollars, as you write. Fools. Here's what I loved about this. The corporate media knew a good thing when they saw it. Even pundits who years earlier, who had been up in arms, I guess a pun there, against the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, now called for the United States to unconditionally support Ukraine. And here's this one. Anyone who asked uncomfortable questions about that support was immediately labeled a Russian apologist or Russian agent or was doing Russia's bidding. A blue and yellow flag became almost mandatory in America's social media profile platforms. That's a lot of targets you're hitting there as a sniper, and you're hitting them like dead center. Thoughts? I mean, it's like the War Room MAGA. It's the center of the MAGA Earth right there. Thoughts?
Well, it's just looking at our current situation and spending a little time with it rather than just shooting off a one-sentence tweet or retweeting something that I haven't researched. Yeah. And I just look at these things and apply a little common sense to them and then weave them into the story in a way that propels that story forward. There's another chapter in there, chapter 10. I don't know if you remember that one. That's the lobbyist sitting down with the congressman. And in that case, they're talking about the pharmaceutical industry, but it ties into how this congressman is funding his campaigns and hiding money offshore. And I usually weave in a sentence or two about family members who are in some sort of a business that allows them to benefit financially from their relative's position as an elected representative.
Well, funny you mention that because I don't know if you saw if your folks, your agents gave you this, but I did an article for the Washington Times that basically took your work. I'm looking at the article now. Fictional Congressman Douglas Linden rails on the line, the doublespeak, the insider trading, and family members of politicians caught red-handed taking millions from foreign governments hostile to the U.S. Who could that be, right? Yet he cynically trades campaign contributions for legislative support of lawsuit immunity for big pharma vaccines. So I get it. And by the way, the Terminal List, Jack Carr's first book, which gripped me, the big theme of that was how big pharma had collaborated with portions of the defense military-industrial complex and wow, the Navy SEALs themselves, command, to really do nefarious things. But yeah, you're over the target. When we come back, we're going to break now, Jack. But when we come back, I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on whether you've been getting any flack from the usual suspects out there, or are you able to shoot these bullets under the cover of fiction and not take any of the crap that Steve and I get here on the War Room? So when we come back, we'll keep going through your excellent book. I'm going to put this book up here for the War Room audience, not on the podcast. Jack Carr, Only the Dead. This is I don't know, I guess it's called A Layperson's Guide to MAGA. We'll be right back with Commander Carr. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all
Look around and tell me what you see. Every day, more people in the street. Said I used to work in a factory. Right now, I don't work for anything. It's not me, but my family I wish to feed. Not much, 'cause we've got simple needs. Too bad they sent our jobs away. As the CEOs get richer and our jobs all move offshore, go to the store and spend our money. Send all the dollars overseas. This ain't the land of milk and honey. This is the land of trading greed. My brother got his college degree. He dreamed of running a factory. Now he's back home, living with mom again. 'Cause there's no bright future for a working man like him. Oh, go to the store and spend our money. Send our dollars overseas. And this ain't the land of trading. We